Welcome back to LIS754 Systems Analysis and Design. This is the session on security components and threats to security. And before we were so rudely interrupted by a technology failure, we were talking about threats to security, and these are disclosure, deception, and disruption, and these correspond directly to the security components of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Disclosure is the unauthorized access to information. Disclosure is the opposite of confidentiality. So if a system must be confidential, have confidentiality of information, disclosure is the threat. If integrity is one of the primary components of security, then deception, the acceptance of false data, is the threat. And disruption is the interruption of the correct operation, and that is the threat to availability. So there is a one-to-one correlation between the threats to security and the components of security, and it just makes sense. There are other more complicated schemes for talking about threats to security, and this is one of them, created by three researchers looking at how we organize and consider threats to security of systems. And they made a hierarchy of threats, external threats and internal threats. That's the highest level of their hierarchy. And within each of those, within external threats and internal threats, you can have threats from humans, from the environment, and from technology. Within the human aspect of this, there's maliciousness and non-maliciousness, sort of a what the motivation is, and then under that, it's either accidental or intentional. But regardless of the hierarchy, it comes all down to these same levels of the same results. What are the results of these threats? And the results, I decided to blow this up a little bit, is the destruction of information, the corruption of information, theft or loss of the information, illegal usage, disclosure, denial of use, and elevation of privilege. And all of those things go back to, no matter how complicated your process, they go back to those issues of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, that we are somehow disrupting part of that, though one of the three of that triad, the security component triad. Destruction of information has to do with integrity, corruption, again, integrity, theft and loss, illegal usage, disclosure is all about confidentiality, denial of use is availability, and elevation of privilege is, again, about confidentiality, getting access to material you're not supposed to have access to. So there's a number of these different theoretical models, but they come down to those same issues. There's more than one biggest issue here. I'm sorry for that funny title for this slide, but when we think about internal threats to our security, it often comes down to carelessness. There's a number of cases where physical media, whether a flash drive or a disk, had sensitive information. There's a very famous one a couple of years ago where a health insurance vice president had his laptop in a car. It was stolen. The data was unsecured. It wasn't encrypted. There was no special security on it. Just he dumped a bunch of data on his laptop and it was stolen. And so tens of thousands of people had their health insurance information, including social security numbers, health care numbers, health record numbers, doctor numbers, diagnoses, all made public. because someone didn't take care of the data. There's people who do things because they're unaware, not just careless, but they don't have a clue, right? So machines are left unsecured. People don't turn off their computers. People make changes to systems without following processes. So that's how you can get those elevations of privileges. Someone wants more access to information than they should have. They don't go through processes, etc. There are significant financial motivations for people to bypass security measures in financial institutions, banks, brokerage firms, insurance companies. People will create false accounts in order to bypass systems and get financial reward, to basically steal. If a well-designed system would make that very, very difficult. It's not impossible. People figure out how to game systems all the time. And so it's the goal of the system designer to try to make it as difficult as possible for people to do that. And then there are motivations and incentives to do harm to systems because people feel treated badly by the company. People are feel like they should have been promoted and weren't, and so they do destructive things. And again, the goal of the systems analyst is to provide mechanisms that make that very hard. And for external threats, there's opportunities based on vulnerabilities of organizations. And there has to be some kind of a gain for this. Again, a motivation based on some people are hack into systems because they're against the company. They've had some issues with the company, but mostly it's for financial rewards. We want to steal credit card numbers. We want to steal Social Security numbers, and they do that when they find a vulnerability in the system and take advantage of that. In the next sessions, we're going to be talking about how we can mitigate these risks. What is it that systems analysts and designers can design for systems? What mechanisms can they employ to prevent security issues? All right, talk to you soon.